everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Crossin Streams, I guess, double feature. I'm your host, the real Geno Reynolds. And today I was just going to talk about The Punisher Season 2, but I keep forgetting that I didn't do Daredevil Season 3, and part of me didn't even want to do it because, well, they canceled it, and why should I care anymore? But I figured, you know what, even though I didn't watch it again, I'll talk about it a little bit and give you my thoughts on it. So we'll start with Daredevil Season 3. So what we have here is, as we found out at the end of The Defenders, Matt Murdock survived the collapse of that building, and he was found and is being treated by the church. And so it's getting to a point where he has to build himself back up, but also in a way he kind of leaves the Daredevil behind, at least the costume version of it, because in this series he goes back to the black uniform, which actually plays into the story whenever it comes to the man that becomes, or will become, or should have become, because the freaking series got canceled, Bullseye. We also follow the Kingpin and him trying to be able to get his love back to the States. So those are the overarching themes. And also, again, we get the build-up of Benjamin Dex Poindexter, also known as the future Bullseye. I really like this season because of how they stripped away the costume. I'm not saying I never liked the costume, because don't get me wrong, I did. But I think what they were trying to do is, in a way, kind of like Batman, where Matt Murdock is finding out that Matt Murdock is the disguise kind of thing, where he is the Daredevil. And he just goes to his roots and starts wearing the black outfit again. He doesn't want to be a symbol. He just wants to do his job, or his quote-unquote job. But as we find out, to frame Daredevil, Kingpin hires the future Bullseye to wear the Daredevil costume and start killing people with his skills, we'll say. So they kind of have that going on, where Daredevil's being framed. Long story short, again, I like what they did here. I like what they did with all the characters. Charlie Cox is still great as Daredevil, and I like that, again, they stripped him away to just, here's him doing what he feels he needs to do. And I hope that if Daredevil does continue, not in this sense, but as on, say, the Disney Plus streaming service, I hope they get Charlie Cox back to play Matt Murdock, even if it's PG-13. Daredevil doesn't have to be mature. It can be PG-13. Don't ask Ben Affleck that, but it can be PG-13 and work if done right. Look at The Dark Knight. You can go dark and not go R. You can borderline it. I love Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk. He's definitely the Kingpin now. He's wearing the white suits. His whole thing about trying to get his wife back, I loved, because he's trying to get her back, and when he finally does, he kind of tries to hide everything from her, and she's just like, no, if we're going to be together, we're going to be together. So I think they were setting her up as one of the villains in the next season, if they would have gotten it, kind of taking over for Wilson after he gives himself up to save his lady. I also liked Wilson Bethel as the future Bullseye, though we technically didn't get like the costume Bullseye. They were going to go with it next, you could tell. So I really like that. I love how they used his skills. I mean, he had the perfect aim and stuff like that. They didn't address if he was the sniper in whatever season that was that had the, everyone thought was Bullseye. They didn't really address that. I was a little disappointed in that. There wasn't any real crossovers when it came to the heroes. I would have liked to have seen Danny Rand or Luke Cage pop up, but that didn't happen. I like the story with Karen Page, how they ended up bringing her back into the fold. She stopped being a reporter, and she, in the end, of course, Foggy and Matt get back together, and Karen joins them. So they're back doing their law thing. So I liked what the season was doing. I didn't, though it was fine. I was fine with it. I thought, again, they borrowed too much off of, well, here's something to do with your family. One of the nuns that's helping Matt recuperate ends up being his mom, which I was fine with that story, but it just feels like all the other Marvel shows were borrowing the family thing. You have Luke Cage dealing with his dad. You have Jessica Jones dealing with her mom. I mean, the whole family thing has just been used too much. I'm not saying it didn't work. I'm just saying that they keep using it, and they're using it too much. I was a little disappointed we didn't get Frank Castle for an episode. I think they could have used him for an episode, and it would have been fun. That being said, if he would have been there, he would have stuck around and got the job done in one episode, and you wouldn't have had a season. But anyway, I'm a Punisher fan, so that's just the way I think. So anyway, is this season good? Yes. Should they have made another season on Netflix? Yes. Do we have Disney to thank for the downfall? Technically, yes. I know Netflix is the one that dropped it, but come on, we all know it's because Disney was going to do something with it anyway. They probably weren't going to re-sign whenever that happened. So Netflix just said, you know what, let's cut our losses. Is it worth watching? Yes. Is it disappointing that you're watching something that is over and doesn't really get a real conclusive ending? Yeah, it's very disappointing. And again, that's why I think I just kind of slowed down and didn't even want to talk about it, because it's like, well, even though I enjoyed it, we're not getting more, so what's the point? But is it worth checking out? Yeah, the characters are good. The story's pretty good. Is it a perfect season? No. Did I feel it was a better season than season 2? Other than the Punisher stuff, yes. So I would still say, even though we're not getting any more, at least on the Netflix format, you should check it out anyway. Okay, so now let's move on to the Punisher season 2. I was so looking forward to this in some ways. And in other ways, I'm like, well, you're probably just going to cancel it anyway, so why should I get excited? Well, you know what? I should get excited because Jon Bernthal is the Punisher. He's Frank Castle. He's perfect. He is so perfect. Ever since season 2 of Daredevil, he's been perfect. And he was amazing in season 1, and he's even more so in season 2. And I'm just going to say this, Netflix, don't cancel this show. I get why you canceled Daredevil. I get why you canceled Iron Fist. I get why you canceled The Defenders and Luke Cage and probably Jessica Jones, even though you're going to hype up the season and then cancel it right after. Don't cancel The Punisher. Because, honestly, if The Punisher here gets canceled, unless Disney Plus comes out with a Marvel Knights or a Marvel Max edition to their streaming service, we're probably never going to get The Punisher again. And honestly, I don't want to see anyone else the Punisher. Jon Bernthal is perfect as the character. So there's a glowing review of his character work. So that's worth watching this season just for him. That being said, the rest of the season is really good too. Basically where this season starts off is Frank Castle's kind of on the road, just kind of away from everything, just living life, just trying to move from place to place, and he ends up at a bar, and he meets a lady, and they hit it off, and you're thinking, even though you kind of know it's going to end bad, you're thinking that Frank might be finding some peace. He might be able to move on now that those that are responsible for his family's death are dead, and he can finally put the death of his wife and kids behind him. But of course we know this is Frank Castle and this is a Punisher story, so that's not going to happen. He sees that a teenage girl is being chased by these group of people, and he ends up helping her out, helping her escape, ends up murdering some people in the process, and also this girl that he met gets injured as well. And so the Punisher ends up in a situation where, of course, that's what he ends up in, because in a way, deep down, he didn't want to be happy. He wanted to find trouble. He wanted to be able to punish the guilty. Even though they make it a little more complicated than it is, say, in the comics in this series. Also, we follow Billy Russo, who is still in the hospital after Frank basically grated his face on a broken mirror. And also, while he's in the hospital, he has forgotten a lot of what happened, a lot of who he was. He remembers that him and Frank were friends, but he doesn't remember what he did to Frank's family. He doesn't remember what he did to Agent Madani. And Agent Madani, by the way, who survived her shot to the head, she visits Billy Russo at the hospital because she thinks he's lying and he really can remember, and she's just waiting to catch him. And also she's heavily drinking because she feels like he's getting away. She wishes that Frank would have just killed him because of what he did in season 1. And going back to Billy Russo, those that are expecting the real Jigsaw, don't get your hopes up. That being said, I like what they did with this character. They're focusing more on the inner scars than the outer. His face is still messed up, but Ben Barnes is still pretty. Let's just leave it at that. But he's focusing on the inner scars, and he doesn't understand. He keeps having these nightmares of, the Punisher's skull on his chest plate. And he keeps having these nightmares and he can't sleep. And they have a side story with his psychiatrist that I thought worked, but it was, for me, it was one of the weaker parts of the season, but it wasn't bad at all. I liked everything about this season. It was just, if we're going to talk about the highs and lows, it was near the middle or a little lower, because there really wasn't any low lows except one thing I'll talk about here in a second. So I like what they did with Billy Russo. They mentioned Jigsaw once or twice, but it was more about his state of mind. Even though one of the characters says this guy with his jigsaw face, I thought that was kind of a weird line, because whenever they mention the jigsaw of his mind, that's all they should have just left it at. Because again, they're focusing on his inner scars. And I really liked Ben Barnes in this season. I like what they did with him. And his and Frank's story has a definite conclusion, which I like that as well. When it came to Agent Madani, I was never really a big fan of her character from season 1, and I thought she was fine in season 1. I felt the same way in season 2. She just wasn't a strong character for me. She was fine, but I would have rather have had like Martin Soap from the comics or someone like that. Someone that just, I don't know. I think it just would have fit better for me. But again, the character's fine. It doesn't hurt the season, just like in season 1. But I would have. She's just not my favorite part. Curtis comes back. He's definitely the support structure, and he plays into the Jigsaw story because, of course, he was friends with Billy Russo as well. Then you have the story of this teenage girl, where she's being chased by this group for having these pictures of a prominent family's son who's a senator. And this is where the season kind of plays into politics. I'm not bothered by it at all. I thought it was fine that they brought this political stuff in, but a lot of people are crying foul that how dare you put politics into this. It would have worked either way. Basically, these pictures are of this senator having he's kissing another man, and the parents are very conservative, and they feel it'll ruin this guy's career, and they're grooming this senator for president, their son for president. And so that plays into the other half of the story, which I'll talk about that in a second. But I will say this, the weakest part of this season for me was one of the same complaints I had about Daredevil season 2. This season had the problem of having the two different stories, where you had the story of Jigsaw, and then you had the story of this girl being chased by another villain, John Pilgrim, who is kind of the holier-than-thou hitman of this power couple of these whose son is in office. And I really wished, though I enjoyed both stories, I wanted more of John Pilgrim, but they had to focus more on Billy Russo, where I was fine with that because I liked the Billy Russo story, but again, I think you should have just picked one. So back to the John Pilgrim villain story. You have Frank Castle with basically this teenage sidekick, and he's trying to, in some ways, teach her that life isn't fair, and he teaches her also how to defend herself, which leads to a really cool scene, because this girl, at times she's like, I think it'd be easy to kill somebody, until she finally has to do it. And then of course it's, Frank has to kind of talk her down, even though, because, it's easy for him. And he's just like, well, but I understand that it's not for you. So he has this sidekick, but also the way this character of Amy plays out is she's only like a year older than his own daughter would have been at the time of the show. So in a way, he gets a bit of a surrogate daughter. And I like that, how that plays into it. Because there's times she asks him about his family, and you can tell how close they're getting when the way they talk to each other. And in the end, it gets to a point where, she basically, to him, it feels like his daughter, and he'll do anything for her. He will defend her in any way, and I really liked what they did with that. When it comes to John Pilgrim, I would have liked more of his story, because even though it's pretty obvious where it's going, he keeps getting sent away from his family because he has to go clean up this other this power couple's mess. And so the problem is his wife is sick, and he's leaving his wife and his sick wife and two sons at home, and the wife's gonna die while he's away. It's pretty obvious, but I liked that he had to go back to New York, where he used to be. He would kill people without a second thought. He was just a horrible, horrible person, which he still kills people, and still has this weird sense of religion in this, but he goes back to this life that he used to be in, and you get to see him kind of fall from grace, and then him find his way back. And I would have liked more with him. We just didn't get enough of it. So yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment, though I really liked the character. It was a bit of a disappointment for me. Another disappointment for me was, and I'm just going to make it short and sweet, no Micro. I was surprised we didn't even get one episode with Micro. We did get one episode with Karen Page. That being said, apparently she was only had enough time to film one episode with them, and with the way they were kind of setting those two up together with Frank and her, I would have liked a little bit more. I was still satisfied with the episode, but if we don't get another season, then that'll be kind of a disappointing lack of conclusion for that story. And I was also a little disappointed. It would have been nice to, we don't maybe not get Daredevil, but it would have been nice to get Matt Murdock in this, because there's a point where, I mean, though Karen Page does play into it because she's working with Foggy and Matt, Frank needs a lawyer at one point. So I think it would have been nice to have him at least show up or something like that, just for this one episode. And also, there's an episode titled something like Just One Bad Day, or whatever it was that the Punisher said to him, just one bad day and you become me. There's an episode called that, and to not have Daredevil or Matt Murdock show up in that was a little disappointing as well. Again, though, in the end, this series and this season has been awesome. And I can't say enough good things about Jon Bernthal as Frank Castle. I love what they did with him. The last scene of the episode, or of the season, was, let's just say, it's the end of the origin of Frank Castle. We'll just put it at that. We've gotten 2 seasons for Frank to find out who he's really supposed to be. And while this would be an okay conclusion if it does end here, we finally got where we want it to be, and I don't want to see it end. So it'll be disappointing if Netflix pulls the plug on this one. That being said, I have a feeling, I just have this gut feeling that this is the one that they're going to keep. So yeah, if you enjoyed season 1, if you enjoyed Jon Bernthal and Daredevil season 2, you're going to love this season 2, or this season as well. Despite it being a little unbalanced with the villains, Jon Bernthal's performance alone makes this season worth watching. That's going to be all for this edition of Crossin Streams. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about either Daredevil Season 3 or The Punisher Season 2, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds. See you later.